What is going on, everyone? My name is Jared and welcome to TechWorks again. So today, I'll move over a little bit. So today we got another crazy build that I did. So what got me in the mood was Intel's Extreme Build Challenge for this year, and I was looking at all the cool PC makers, Origin and Digital Storm and a bunch of others, and all these crazy wow designs. And you know, I'm not super seasoned when it comes to PC building. I got into it a few years ago, and I built some cool things, and I know I've shared with the channel a bunch of them, but nothing quite takes the cake like this. So I wanted to do this for a long time, and finally, you know what, I just said, I'm gonna do it. And so I did it. For those of you who don't know, this is my Ryzen 1950X Threadripper build. I had the original parts for this back in the fall when I did the water block and the motherboard install into my old case, which was more of a, it was an open design. So this was by far Thermaltake's one of their coolest cases, and they do a ton of cool cases. My last case was built by them, but this one was specifically designed for liquid cooling. There's 2 spots for radiators on the sides, up to 480 millimeter. So a huge support, tons of room in the back for cable management, pipe management, anything you need. And you don't have to do liquid cooling with this case. You can also do air cooling. However, I would say there's not as many spots to mount fans. There is a bunch on the back. You could mount 8 or 10 fans if you wanted to, all 120 millimeter fans, if you wanted to. But it's definitely more catering to liquid cooling. So I wanted to put this together. It was my first time bending PETG tubing, which is, you know, the hard line pipe which you see Origin and PC makers use all the time. So to get all these radiuses and different bends, you have to do mandrel bends with a heat gun and a little piece of silicone to put inside the tube, so when you bend it, it doesn't lose shape. So that was definitely new to me. I'd never done it. I did hardline before, but I used all fittings to connect it, and I really wanted to do bends, have it a really clean aesthetic, and go from there. And then kind of from there, it just transformed. So it went from doing the CPU hardline cooling with this white opaque fluid to, well, I want to do my graphics card now. So I had an Asus Republic of Gamers Strix 1080 Ti, and this is the stock cooler. And I mean, one of the things, I mean, the card is huge to begin with, but most of it is actually this cooler, and I've actually am really impressed with the design of all the heat pipes, really big plate for the GPU to sit on. And I mean, it did a very good job at cooling that card, but it still got hot. And going from a open case where this could vent really easily to a closed case, essentially, with a lot of glass, I wanted to make sure that there was enough cooling going on for it. So then I decided that, well, I might as well liquid cool that too. So I bought the Phanteks Glacier water block, specifically made for this card, so I could keep the Asus backplate, and I also integrated the lighting back into Asus Aura. So it kind of just, it made sense. So I got that. I was super nervous, and I was going to record it, taking it apart and putting the water block on, but I really didn't know how it was going to go, and I'd rather not have all my mistakes filmed for everyone to see, but it came out really well. The hardest part for me, especially never doing it, was getting these 2 cables out of the original card. So one is for lighting and the other is for your fans. And I just had a hard time. They were really in there. Other than that, it was pretty easy. They had all the thermal pads cut for the specific areas. The instructions were pretty clear and concise. However, I wouldn't recommend it if you're just getting into DIY computer stuff, because you are taking apart a very expensive component. And you know, if something happens and it didn't work out right, you know, you could potentially be out a lot of money. So, you know, try it as you will. It wasn't as hard as I expected it to be, but it's still definitely not as easy as just plugging your card in or putting an air cooler on your CPU. A little more involved than that. And then from there, I said, well, I need to have 2 water loops, because I didn't want, this runs hot and Threadripper runs hot too, and I didn't want to connect both of these and have a really warm water loop especially if you're playing 4K games, if you're editing a lot of content, anything, if you're streaming and you're using your GPU to render and your CPU is, a lot of resources are taken up with that also. I really didn't want it to get hot. So I got another loop, another radiator. They're both 360s with 3 fans on each, and it has came out great. So far, here's what my build is. It is a Threadripper 1950X matched with 64 gigs of Corsair Vengeance DDR4 RAM, 320 megahertz. I have a capture card for streaming, an Asus Republica Gamers 1080 Ti, 2 Thermaltake D5 Pumps, 2 Thermaltake 360mm radiators, a 3.5-inch 2 terabyte drive just for storage, and I have a 500 gig M.2 drive hiding underneath the card. And of course we got this beautiful Tower 900 case, and down here I have the Commander Thermaltake fan controller, which I have specifically controlling my GPU fans. So right now they're on high. I can press the button, turn them on low. If I'm just sitting here browsing the internet, not doing anything graphics card related, turn them on low, make it nice and silent. So a word to the wise, this case is heavy. This thing weighs 70 pounds with nothing in it, and it is huge. I mean, it is, I have a tape measure, I mean, it is 3 foot tall at least. I need a desk for my computer just by itself. So if you're gonna build in this thing, make sure you got enough room. I barely have enough room here because all your cable management is up underneath this lid, because your I/O for your motherboard is about right here underneath this shield. So you gotta have long enough cables to go all the way through the back and down to whatever you're doing. You're not gonna have problems with keyboard and mouse, especially mechanical ones, because a lot of times they do come with a very long cable. The things I had trouble with were my DisplayPort connections and some of my USB devices, like for my microphone and my camera, both of which had very short cables, which made it very hard to get to. Ethernet is very easy to get a long cable, and everything else wasn't too bad. Other than that, there wasn't many surprises when I built this. It was actually pretty easy to put together because there is so much room. You do also have 2 case fans, one here and one in the back, to help exhaust heat out. So really though, this is like my Mona Lisa, right? This is my most impressive build to date. I don't know how I'm gonna top this in the future, but it certainly takes the cake. So it does have 3 pieces of tempered glass, which goes in the front and 2 sides. And I did put some RGB strips to just finish it off. And once I put the glass on, it should look real nice, illuminate it real good. And everything works together except for the water block, which for the CPU, I don't have integrated with the whole Asus Aura. I thought about it today. I probably could get it in there by splicing it into the RGB header, but it's already together. Everything is cable management and zip tied, and to be honest, I don't feel like taking it apart just to get that going. So it's just on RGB loop. It looks fine. No big deal. So anyway, I'm gonna throw in some glamour shots. I want to see everything in action, and there we have it. shots of this PC. You might notice when I zoom in on the pipe, you see little black marks, and that's where I marked it to my bends. Fun fact, you can't use isopropyl alcohol on the PETG tubing because it'll actually start to crack and dry it, and it could ruin the structural integrity of the tube. So if you're going to mark your pipes, use something like a pencil or something that you can wipe off like a crayon, something that's not going to be permanent. But you can't see it most of the time, but you may notice it when I'm up close. Another thing about cooling, so I've never had Threadripper with an air cooler, but my Threadripper runs between 50 and around 70 to the highest 80 degrees Celsius under load, and my GTX 1080 Ti that used to run around 50, 60, 70 and higher under load now runs idle around mid 20 degrees Celsius to under load, the highest I've seen so far around 40 degrees Celsius. Now that isn't with an IDA 64 stress test. This is just me playing Far Cry 5 at 4K, trying to get 60 frames a second, which it does do, especially with some tweaks here and there. So for right now, I'm gonna relax. I could definitely go more over the top, add another GTX 1080 Ti, add more lights, add more everything, but for right now, I'm gonna relax a bit, enjoy what I have, and go from there. So again, if you like what I do, please drop me a subscription. I'd really appreciate it. You see all my new videos. If you have any questions or comments, things I could have done better, questions you have for me for advice, drop a comment. I always try to answer the best of as I can, best of my ability, and try to answer everybody. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to watch what I did here, and see you in the next one.